Oh, right, folks, I got a very, very special guest all the way from, I think, Austin, Texas. It's his nighttime is our morning. Simon Smart, the amazing Simon Smart. So many things about Simon. We can describe leader, man of men, entrepreneur, martial artist, coach, teacher, martial arts teacher also, and so many other titles. But I think more importantly, just an incredible man of great wisdom. So I just want to get him on. We can talk about different things: leadership, warrior spirit, what it's like to be a man in this day and age with so many conflicting messages that come in, right, on what being a man is, and so many differing views. And how do you juggle that with entrepreneurship? But some people are great at business, but very, very weak in the household. And what is the future of relationships also, especially when people are busy, so I think I have no idea what Simon's going to say, but I know it's going to be great. So welcome, Simon.
Hey, Mel, I'm so happy to be here. I may say something great by accident. I may say something terrible. Let's find out.
That's awesome. That makes for a great show. So, Simon, just long and short, just a quick 2 to 3 definite minutes. How did you get into this work? This work of coaching men, this work of working together with men, just really trying to find their power and just becoming good leaders also. How did you get into this? Because I think anyone that enters this space, as a person that was in this space for a short while, many years ago, anyone that enters this space has a little bit of the story. So give us the short story of how you got here.
I'll give you the short story, Mel, because I know when people come on podcasts, all they want to do is talk about themselves. It's just not my style, man. But many years ago, many moons ago, I graduated law school back in Scotland and decided that being a practitioner of the law was not my path. And I had been studying martial arts for a decent amount of time. I already had a black belt back then. And I decided to move to Japan. Trained long and hard in Japan for about 4 years. Met some incredible teachers. People I still look up to. Honestly, people whose lessons I'm still unpacking and struggling to be a worthy student of 20 plus years later. I also had an experience way back then where I realized that even though I was 21 years old and walking around with a black belt and a tough little mofo with a shitty little attitude, I felt like a boy in a man's body. And a lot of people talk about this. No one was talking about this back then. There, obviously, in Western culture, has been a real loss of any rite of passage training, any segmentation from boyhood into manhood, any training around what manhood even is. So like many youths, I was a little lost and a little confused. I came across a teacher who took me on, who trained here in Tucson, actually up northern Arizona with the San Carlos tribe for many years, and he ran traditional rites of passage. And I trained for about a year. I ran a traditional vision quest up in the mountains of Japan. And when I came down, I was very, very different in my body, in my mind, in my heart. And continued training down that path, past the level of manhood into what would be traditionally known as warriorship. I did that for many years. And here I am, a lot of years later, still a student, but occasionally able to help a few other guys to locate who they are. And you talked about this in the beginning, right? There are so many messages now for men. 20 years ago, there was only the briefest beginnings of an awareness that something had been lost around masculinity. I'm very heartened now that if you go on social media, there's a lot of messaging now about masculinity and manhood. The problem's almost become too much noise, not enough signal now. And so I try to focus some of my energy onto building better men, but who's to say what better is, right? Is that my call? Is it my job as the amazing teacher to come in and tell you what you need to do to be a better man? Well, I have no damn idea what you need to do to be a better man. I want each guy that I work with to be a better man according to his own values and his own heart, and what that means to him is different from what it means to me. But if we can provide that guy with some structure and some guidance and some tools, that's what I like to do.
Wow. So let's ask the most obvious transitional question. What is a man? Like, these days, it's so funny. There's so many interesting messages. I saw this in Congress where they're like, what is a woman? And like people didn't want to obviously say, well, it's a person that does this, because this is such a weird time now where people are afraid to give like a clear answer what a man and what a woman is, with all the transgender debates and toxic masculinity. And I've never seen grown adults, men and women, struggle to even just go, what is a man? What is a woman? So what is a man, Simon?
These days, I have no idea, or do I? Now, I'm very interested in history, Mel, and culture, and we're aware of many cultures that have come and gone throughout history. And I think for every one we're aware of, there are 5, 10, 100 cultures that we don't even know about. And so an interesting question would be, of all the cultures that have ever come and gone in this world, how many of them disagreed about what a man was and what a woman was? Or are we the only one? I have no idea. I know what a male is because we have DNA and we have chromosomes. Let me tell you what I think a man is, and just my opinion. A human is born as a baby. And as a baby, obviously they have a gender, but they have a sex. They don't really have a gender. Boy and girl babies are kind of the same. And babies don't have a lot of responsibility, right? Babies just exist and feed and cry. In traditional cultures, there's a first steps ceremony that the Nadi or the Apache tribe celebrates. You'll see this in a lot of Native American tribes. First moccasin or a first steps ceremony. And it's when the boy or girl goes from being horizontal, like a baby, right? Horizontal on its back or on its front, crawling around, when that human starts to become vertical. So they stand between heaven and earth. There's a ceremony for that. And with that ceremony, there is a taking on of responsibility. The responsibility of a boy is to survive and listen to adults and try his best to learn. That is the small circle of his responsibility. Well, when he's mastered being a boy and he's ready to become a man, he steps into a larger circle of responsibility. Responsibility to be a protector, to work to provide for himself and those around him, to have some sort of connection to the divine, to Creator, to the Holy Spirit, and to provide some sort of leadership to himself and a growing circle of people around him. So I think it's better to define a man by his duties and his responsibilities than have a debate over what it is and what it isn't. Also, I got really into this for many, many years because this was my thing and it was blowing up in the culture. I got to tell you, Melvin, I have retreated from that. And I have gotten to a place where I care less and less about the opinions of society at large about what a man is. What I care about is me, my son, and the men in my circle. Beyond that, I don't much care. And I got to tell you, that has given me so much peace in this world. Because I don't think we're designed to comprehend all the diverse argumentation of millions and billions of people and try to take it all on board. I think we should have a small circle and make the decisions that are best for us and our families and our employees and just kind of draw the line there. I think it's a better way to live.
Yeah, I think I love what you mentioned about the idea of a man versus a male. It is possible to be a male without being a man. I think these days we have so-called men, but I'll just call them males, who are of great legal age, 21 and above, 30, 40, 50, and more, who are maturity, responsibility, leadership-wise, still behaving like a boy. We might even argue they are still horizontal instead of vertical. So why do you think that happens? Like, is it just because they get poor instruction, they get poor direction, they never matured? And how does a male mature into a man? So, you mentioned rite of passage, but these days there's nobody like Sparta to make you take the spear out into the cold and kill the wolf. So I'm just doomed. There's no rite of passage. You either figure it out or you're fucked. Like, how does this happen?
How does the chain get broken? It's a long discussion, but the Industrial Revolution in the West drove men out of the home, out of the farm, and into the factories, and really began to break down society. We have older people now. I say older, not elders. Once upon a time, a boy would often learn the skills of manhood, not from his father, who was busy working or hunting or at war. He'd learned it from his grandfather. And we have an entire generation, probably multiple generations by now, of elders who've abandoned the quest for wisdom. We have a youth-obsessed culture.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to stay young, right? Everyone wants to get plastic surgery and be cool and, pretend it's still the 60s and, the Beatles are still in fashion. But when you have a culture that worships only youth, you therefore abandon age and you abandon eldership. And when you abandon eldership, you also throw out wisdom. Because when you're young, you have energy and passion and drive. But one thing you do not have is wisdom. And there is no fast track to wisdom. It takes years of living and paying attention, making mistakes, having your heart broken, being bankrupted. All these things are what eventually drive wisdom. And we don't have a culture where the elders are driven to teach. I could make the argument that the explosion in the coaching movement is in large part down to the abandonment of mentorship by the elders towards the youth. Does that make sense?
Wow, that is good. Expand a little bit on that. That is kind of interesting, right? It's because people can't find answers these days. Because before they could find answers from someone older, someone wiser, the shaman in the village. Now they're like, fuck, I can't find anything. I need to go online and try to find this guy in the States, in Canada, in China, wherever. Please help me. I know what the hell I'm doing.
It's an amazing thing, right? We used to just learn at the knee of the people around us, and they had great wisdom to share. And now we have a much larger global culture, but it's driven this desire for people to get wisdom and knowledge. And there's technical coaching, right? There's coaching around tactics and techniques and all the different things we do in business or relationships. But every time I've ever had a mentor, even in the coaching space, it's the wisdom that really was the value for me. It was their lived experience transmitted into me in a way that changed how I understood the world, my relationship to it, in a way that grew my vision. And so that's what people used to get from their village, from their community, from their tribe.
Wow.
It's created a tremendous opportunity for those in the coaching space. And it's not good, it's not bad, it just is what it is. But there are a lot of people who grew up without anyone willing to help them to grow. Yeah. And without anyone willing to hold a larger vision for them to step into.
Yeah. I love what
in my mind, that's our coach.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned, right? A wisdom, lived experience transmitted to me in a way that changed the way I see the world and expanded my vision. I think that is amazing because I think that's what people got from their elders last time. It wasn't just like here's how to cook or hunt or here's how to do carpentry, which these days you probably have YouTube videos for, but it was like in the process of doing that. If you see Mr. Miyagi, the way he taught the Karate Kid, right? He was asking him not to paint the fence, but was trying to convey some lessons via this, up, down, left, right, circle kind of thing to teach him about maybe discipline, teach him about different things. And that was the wisdom as opposed to the art of painting a fence, which would otherwise be the technical skill. So I think that is so well said. I want to talk about another thing also, which is what happens if someone watching this who is male, or maybe before this call thought they were very manly and suddenly realize, oh shit, I have no idea how to be a man. What hope do they have? Because in this day and age, I think the idea of being a man has been polluted, let's use that word, with the idea that it has a lot to do with wealth, how big your arms are, what kind of car you drive, how many women you have slept with, and a lot of superficial symbols. And you have these, you're more manly. And of course cash. Let's never forget cash, right? The bigger stacks of cash you have, or at least overtly showing it off, then the more manly you are. I think we have an entire generation who buy into that idea. So what is the status symbol? How would you know that you're in the presence of a man? If somebody has bought into the wrong one and wish to make a change in this day and age?
That's such a great question. And I don't know if there's an easy answer to it. I think the most simple answer is that people can feel it. People can feel a level of mature masculinity. And I want to back up a little bit. When I first started in this work, there was very little awareness of the problem around masculinity. Like I said, the awareness around the problem has grown, and some of the solutions have grown. But you have guys like Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, bringing a tremendous amount of visibility around masculinity. And one of my mantras is that men are driven by duty and boys are driven by desire. Men are driven by duty. Boys are driven by desire. Boys are all about what they want to get from other people, be that money, sex, approval, whatever. Men are driven by how can I serve the people around me? How can I be a better protector, a better provider? How can I provide more structure and masculine leadership to my community, to my family? How can I put my own ego aside to be of service? That is mature masculinity in my personal view. And so as you go online and you look at a lot of the other avatars of masculinity, it's an interesting lens to say, is this person preaching the gospel of being driven by duty? Or is this person preaching being driven by desire, fuck bitches, get money? And that's my opinion. You can live however you want.
Yeah.
I'm probably wrong. You asked about what hope does a man have?
Yeah, if someone realizes, dang, I think I bought in the wrong guy, because these guys are that have lots of sex, shoot guns, flash cash, buy fast cars, have all these fancy watches. These guys build huge amounts of traction on social media, and you know, a lot of young boys are bought into this idea. And also social media is designed for these kind of things to really propagate, you know, because if you tell people, hey man, how many of you want to fuck a hot chick, and then everyone's like, yeah, me. If you go, how many of you want to serve people and lead? Oh, sounds like work. No. So one side is heavily skewed towards a maximum viewership, and it's a little bit unfortunate. So if someone listen to this and realize, hey man, I think I bought in the wrong gospel, how should I begin to change? Because you talk about rite of passage, but no one's asking you to, you know, walk icy mountains or kill wild animals these days. So what hope do they have?
Hey, dude, it's such a great question, right? Everyone wants to see the flashy cars. No one wants to watch some dude, you know, build a chicken house for his kids so they can learn about the cycle of nature. That's not social media sexy, but it has, to my mind, more value, right? It has more value. So we all go through stages, right? You're born, you're a boy, then you're a young man, then you become a middle-aged man, then you become an older man, and you change throughout your life. Your priorities change, what you want changes, your vision kind of changes as you get older. But the most important thing is to have a vision. So in a lot of traditions, when a man goes through his rite of passage, it's a vision quest. Everyone's heard that phrase, but people don't really think about what that means. A quest means a search for, and a vision means a way of seeing. And so to me, a vision is about a concrete sense of how you see the world and your interactions with it, your place in it, a concrete sense of who you are and who you're becoming, and what your future looks like, and what your path through this life looks like. Because we're all on a place between now and the day we die, and hopefully we can walk a good path from here to there, right? That's personally what I try to do. That's what I want. So you got to have a vision, and that vision involves who you want to be in this life. And there's never a time when you can't change that or adapt that or get clear on that. There are some shifts that I teach to guys. One of the first shifts is self-expression over self-expectation. Self-expression over self-expectation. Self-expectation is where we put a lot of pressure on ourselves based on how we should be, how the world thinks we should be, what our results should look like. And that can drive someone to phenomenal success. I lived that way for many, many years. And as I've gotten older, I've tried to switch it out for self-expression, because self-expression, rather than taking all my expectations and piling them on top of myself until the pressure is so strong that I smother myself, self-expression is about taking what's inside, reversing the flow, and letting it out. But the first step of self-expression is like, who am I? Like, who am I? Most people have an identity that is just an amalgamation of social expectations. And for a lot of men, especially the ones I work with, it can be months, years, decades since they actually felt like themselves. One of the most painful, like one of those simple exercises I have ever taught, but one of the most difficult and painful, is to have a man stand in front of a mirror, like a bathroom mirror, lock the door, and just look yourself in the eye for 5 minutes with no expectations and no thinking. You would not believe, Mel, how many men can't even look themselves in the eye for 5 minutes. Because to do that, you have to start to reconnect with who you are inside. And that can be jarring, because if who you are inside is out of congruence with the life that you've built, that can start to cause some uncomfortability. Maybe some things have to change. Maybe I haven't been true to myself. Maybe I've been more true to other people. So this is a long conversation and there's a lot to it, but ultimately it just starts with one moment of saying, I'm not happy with who I am right now. Who am I going to be? Who am I? What do I want?
And I think that can happen through, it definitely needs to happen by putting yourself outside of your comfort zone or outside of your, so I love what you talk about societal and parental, societal expectation. You call it self-expectation. But here I took notes that most self-expectation are not self in the sense, they are a reflection and a combination of societal and parental. Because you think it's self as it goes in your head, but actually it's what your mother said was right, your father said was, you know, the thing to do, that the teacher said, the society said. So the worst thing is, you know, we were at an event with Kevin and he said the worst thing is to climb the ladder all the way to the top and suddenly realize, hey man, this ladder's slanting against the wrong building. Like, you know, what the heck was I doing all of these for? Which I think these days a lot of people do, because they do get the car, they do get the woman, they do get all of these things and realize, it's not what it was made out to be. And then everything crumbles because you're like, wait, this was supposed to be the promised land. It is not.
Well, you know, I just moved into a new place. I just met my neighbor yesterday morning. Really great old guy. He's in his 60s. He's a CFO of a company here in Tucson. And he went in for some work on his hip. And they found something with his heart. He had an aneurysm in one of the veins coming into his heart. So had to have massive invasive heart surgery. And now he's suffering from pretty significant depression. Now, partially that's going through surgery and it being extremely difficult on the body, and the recovery process at that age is a little harder. But we talked for a long time, and the reason he's having depression is he can't work right now. So this man has become extremely successful as a financial advisor to a company, workaholic, multiple homes throughout the country, does very, very well for himself. But when he couldn't work, he couldn't distract. What could he not distract from? He could no longer distract from himself. And in that quiet space, he had to begin to confront the fact that the priorities he built his life around were not really his priorities. They were someone else's. And so now he's begun a kind of a journey of working through this depression, but doing it by learning more about who he is. I joked with him that they had to cut the nerves around his heart and his chest. And so he feels this. He literally told me he feels a void in his chest right now. And so the little joke we said was, you know, well, okay, now you get to decide what to fill that void with.
Wow. I think the rite of passage, the way you put it, right? Because before, but I studied some good amounts of history. A rite of passage was a lot like Sparta, where they send a kid out, or they ask people to do like a challenging task. I love how you put it, a vision quest. You know, in so doing, it's less about, hey, you know, let's go and torture ourselves and do weird shit. But it's more about, in doing this, you expand your vision. You find out who you are. You think about what you want to become. And it's a journey. And in the journey of it happening, then you crystallize the sense of self. You discover what is truly important to you. And I think in this day and age, people could do it via a lot of different things. I think that's why people do martial arts, because it's less about sport, but the journey. People travel and solo travel and go to places because in so doing, they strip themselves of their identity and all these other things, and maybe discover what lies beneath and who they really are. Maybe they do, go into nature or whatever the heck they do that is challenging, because they want to put themselves in a place where they can discover who they really are. I think that is the perhaps modern day rite of passage. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you really nailed it. There's, I spoke about this on other podcasts, but there are 7 essential elements to a rite of passage, and one of them is, training under grown men and learning those kinds of things, pre-training, if you will. There's this idea that it should be sacred. What sacred means is that your quest, your rite of passage, should take place in what Carlos Castaneda would call a non-ordinary reality. So when we're going about our day on our computer, on the phone, loading the dishwasher, that's normal reality. We want to get out of that. So it's useful to fast and pray or do sweat lodge or whatever it is to break yourself down so you can begin to access that non-ordinary reality. But then the most important thing, especially for a boy becoming a man, he must leave society. So traditionally, there is a ceremony where his mother says goodbye and his siblings say goodbye and everyone says goodbye, because that boy who leaves is never fucking coming back. He is going to go into the wilderness and die. And so literally in some cultures, the mother has grieving because her little baby is going away. Her little baby is disappearing. And then when he comes back, there's a ceremony to welcome a new man. And so this is another thing which becomes very difficult in a culture that doesn't respect or understand these traditions. I had this because I went through a rite of passage. I did it properly. It was profound and powerful, and I committed my heart and soul to it. I had a difficult relationship with my father when I came back because my father still wanted the old dynamic of father and boy and couldn't understand that the boy was gone and we're now 2 men who need to relearn a new way of relating with each other. Because I'm no longer the boy, you're no longer the father. We're 2 men. You're older, I'm younger, but we're 2 men. And that was very, very difficult for my father to understand because our culture doesn't show those things, doesn't teach those things.
Yeah, our culture doesn't teach those things. Oh my God, yeah. In fact, our culture teaches quite the opposite. You come home and your mom still treats you like you're 12. Your dad still treats you like you're 15, and then you're just this. I think this is why in some places there's such conflicting feelings when it's like your Thanksgiving or go see your parents, because you're like out there you're a grown ass man or maybe a grown ass woman and you're doing great things, but you come home and they treat you like you're 12. Hey man, did you eat? You're like, whoa, what's up with this thing? And they, and they put that frame upon you, and then it leads to some cognitive dissonance. You're like
it does, right? And sometimes I know everyone's experienced this. Sometimes, you're in your business, you're a leader, people respect you, you're up and coming. And then you go home and not only does your family treat you like the old version of you, but you start to act like the old version of you, right? Which is crazy because that's not you, but it goes down to environment trumps willpower, right? You put yourself into that environment that doesn't pull out the very best, most mature, most dynamic version of us.
Yeah.
We don't act that way. So, I mean, this is a whole different conversation, but there's so much power in environment. It is so vital to build and cultivate an environment for your life that supports who you are and who you want to become. In other words, build an environment that's in line with your vision.
Wow. I think that is great. Let's talk about something else that's kind of interesting. How can men lead better both in business and in the household? I love one of the things you shot recently, which is this concept of happy wife, happy life, which oh my God, I always roll my eyes when I hear it. Speakers say it. It's one of the most common themes. Even say it during a relationship segment. And it seems that the man's job in a relationship is to pander to the whims and fancies of the woman, especially while even eye rolling to the fact that the whims and fancies are irrational. So it's like, I know that as a woman, you're being an idiot, but I got to entertain your nonsense. It's not even like they choose to make her happy. It's like they go like, she's clearly being stupid, but you know what? My job and duty is just to entertain her whims and fancies. So, I mean, I have lost count the number of times I've heard people quote this. So let's talk a little bit about this before I talk about leadership in the business. But what are your thoughts on this leading in the household? Because some men are great in business, but very, very off when it comes to their household and relationship.
Mel, I have seen great men build phenomenal businesses and become extremely wealthy before giving half of it away and having a heart attack. What a tragedy. And so I believe, for a start, that we cannot separate our business success and our success around our purpose and our mission from a couple of things. Number one is our vitality, our health, our energy. They drive each other. And so many businessmen pretend that they can abandon their duty to their own vitality and maybe get it back later. It just doesn't work that way. So that's a common mistake. But the other one is this idea that we should focus on our purpose and our business to the detriment of our home life, our relationship with our woman, with our kids, with our community. Because what you don't pay attention to eventually bites you in the ass, right? So I also believe that the personal development space has become extremely feminized. Spirituality has become somewhat feminized. And especially the world of relationship and marriage counseling has become extremely feminized. When I say feminized, I mean particularly that it uses a language and a worldview which is more inherent to the feminine than to the masculine. Neither one is more correct or incorrect, but they each have their place. And as men, a lot of times there's more value in us using the language of masculinity around these things. So you're probably aware, Mel, there's been a movement since the 60s, and it's a wonderful movement towards more self-love. Well, a lot of men don't really resonate with self-love. They don't really feel it inside themselves. They don't get behind that train. But when I start to translate that into doing the things in your life that give you self-respect, there's a light bulb that goes on. It's mostly the same thing, and one leads into the other. But when we use the correct language, it's more accessible to men, and they feel it and they get it, and their growth can really begin to catapult. Now, this idea of happy wife, happy life, number one, is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the laws of the universe. What I mean by that is based on an understanding that by doing something, I can force a particular emotional response in another human being. Well, I'm not God, so I can't make other people feel any particular way. If I spent my life trying to make another person happy, it abrogates their responsibility for the fact that the only person responsible for their happiness is them. Now, as a man in a relationship, it's very, very important for me to know my roles, right? She knows her roles in a good dynamic. And who's to say what they should be? But in any relationship, we all need to understand what our roles are. Mine is to protect the home, protect the perimeter. That means physically, emotionally, and spiritually. My other relationship duty that I've discussed with my girlfriend is that I'm responsible for providing. She does a ton of other amazing things that I don't want to do. So I know my duties, right? And all I can do in life is try my very best to meet my duties, to take care of them. But making another human being happy, impossible. What's even more funny is that when you see men build their entire life around making their woman happy, guess what? It's usually an unhappy woman. She becomes less and less happy, and he tries harder and harder, and now we're just in this downward spiral of doom. What I recommend to men, and it's very counterproductive, very counterintuitive, and it's very difficult for those of us raised in a feminine first culture to really understand this. When a man puts his own mission and his own priorities first, not in a selfish me way, but in a this is what is important in my life, it creates an opportunity for the woman to come into his life. And I don't want to speak to all women, but a lot of women that I've been with, all they want is a man who's dynamic and passionate and on the road to making things happen, and she wants to come with him. And therefore, it's kind of interesting. When the man is happy, it's not even the right word. When the man is satisfied and content and driven and on his path and on his purpose, somehow that can make a woman tremendously happy. Your mileage may vary. I'm not dating your wife, so you need to take that piece of advice under advisement.
Yeah.
But I certainly think it's something worthy of consideration, especially if you're a man who's been trying the other way. And not only is it not helping, it's making things worse.
Yeah.
The other shift, which I think is tremendously important, there's this idea in modern culture, very true in the counseling world, that what fixes relationships is what, Mel? More communication. We just need more communication. Well, communication means talking. And as men, we're not natural born talkers, right? We want to talk to the point that things are clear and actionable, and then we want to go do. So we're instantly at a disadvantage when it comes to being a better communicator, because women are 1,000 times better communicators than us. So what I also find that when men communicate more and more and more, what tends to happen is that couples speak more and more and more about their problems. Now, if we were running a business together, Mel, and all we did was communicate about the problems, how would that business do?
Not so good.
Day in, day out, just talk about the problems. Worse and worse and worse. And then one day we're in the red. And then a day later, the doors are closed. Because in business, we know we need to focus on solutions, right? Solutions and actions. So what I like to do with men is I like to take them away from focusing on communication, although communication is an incredibly important skill in this life and in relationships, but to begin to focus on leadership. Being a better leader is the key for men to having better relationships. And then people start to think, oh man, Simon's talking about controlling women. So I have to make a distinction that leadership is almost the opposite of control. Leadership, how can I say this? Leadership, Mel, is an act of faith. And control is an act of faithlessness and an act of fear of free will of other people. And so being a leader in your relationship is not about controlling anyone. It's about providing more structure, more direction, building the values and the culture of the team, just like we would in business.
Yeah.
In fact, I made a video about this the other day. Men understand when they're in business, they have to build a team, build a culture, build values, build a mission, build the goals, and stay on track towards it. Stay on track, build the vision, build the dream. And then they don't do it at home and they wonder why their home business falls apart. Well, these skills are all transferable.
Yeah. Wow. I think that is that is really, really profound. I think let's talk a little bit about, perhaps we could have asked this right at the start. What's your definition of a leader? I love what you talk about there, because leadership, just like what being man is, so many definitions. A lot of people think leadership, this guy with the most money. Leadership, the one who performed the best, won the most sales. Let's put him as a leader. Sometimes that doesn't pan out. Leadership, the one who's loudest. That's leadership. Leadership, the one who micromanages the most. So many weird definitions. What are your definitions of leadership?
I have a Dutch Shepherd. He's a dual trained protection dog and house dog. It's much like a Malinois with stripes. They're a very, very driven dog. For hundreds of years, they were trained to fight off wolves. Now they're trained to basically hunt down human beings. They're used as police dogs. They're very dominant dogs. And I can't out alpha my dog. He's not scared of me one bit, but he respects me. And he follows my leadership because he trusts that I have his best future in mind. So I was thinking about this earlier, Mel. When you go for a dog walk, you take him on a lead, right? It's called a leash sometimes, but it's also called a lead back in the UK. When I use the lead with my dog, I don't drag him down the street by the lead. In fact, most of the time, the lead is kind of floppy. There's no tension in it. It's just he's walking next to me. The lead is slack, and he trusts that I know where I'm going, and he just comes with me, right? Occasionally, he gets distracted, and I got to use a gentle tug on the lead to bring him back, and then we carry on. And I actually think that's a beautiful model for leadership. The leader is the one with the most clear vision of where we're going together, and the one who's taking on the most responsibility for getting us there. The biggest opportunity in the entire world, Mel, is leadership. You're familiar with supply and demand, I'm sure.
Yeah.
When something is in massive, massive demand and extremely low supply, as business leaders, we should probably look at supplying the marketplace. The marketplace is crying out for leadership. Sometimes ethical leadership, sometimes structured leadership, sometimes just the vision and the you can do this, let's go together. Those things to me are leadership. It's being a vision holder. It's being the person the responsibility begins and ends with, and it's being a coach. Now, there's a lot of business owners who believe themselves to be leaders in their business. But I got to break it to you. Most of you are just employers, and the person just comes to work for money. There's no leadership. If you didn't pay them, they would just leave, as they should. So most of us in business are not actually leaders. We're just managers or employers. Leadership is far more profound. There's got to be a sense of you being so inspired by the vision that it creates inspiration in the others, and they want to go with you.
Wow. Oh, that is really, really that is excellent stuff. That is really great stuff. I guess my final question for you is, what do you think is the future for our XY chromosome gender? There is it's so interesting because I think polarity is dual. We live in an age where it's kind of interesting. There are differing definitions of masculinity, but at the same time, there is a huge callback to the responsibilities and the traditions of masculinity. I've never seen both exist simultaneously. I guess the universe operates in duality. Strong on one side equals equally strong on the other side. Because, before that, I think in the 40s, 30s, everyone kind of knew what this was. And, but now it's been diverted a bit. So people have their differing ideas, but there's a lot of spread of, hey, here's the callback to age-old masculinity. So what do you think is the future? Do you think we're going to see a unification, a lot more manly men, or we're going to see a diversification, which means, you've got some people on the polar of each extreme and thereby defending what they think. So what are Simon Smart's prediction for men in the next 10 or 20?
As I said, Mal, I'm less and less concerned with what the majority are going to do. The majority are going to stay sick and broke and obese and negligent in any duty towards themselves. That's just how it is. So I think if you are a man working on himself, becoming more polarized, becoming more fierce and driven and dynamic and a better leader, but also at the same time working on opening your heart and being able to be present and compassionate and fiercely loving. If that's what you're working on, I think your stock is going to go up and up and up. Again, supply and demand. The supply of integrated, mature men is dwindling fast, and the demand is going up and up and up. I mean, we may have to bring back polygamy at this point. There's going to have to be 10 women for every masculine, mature man. I don't endorse that, but the way it's going, that's probably what might need to happen. I think it's going to get worse for the most part. I think the culture is driving masculinity towards juvenile masculinity, which is a shadow of masculine maturity and responsibility, a caricature even. So I think that's actually going to drag a lot more young men off track. And then rather than having to awaken them to even the idea of masculinity, and I'm talking 10, 15 years down the line, we won't be trying to awaken men to the idea of masculinity. We'll be trying to realign their juvenile masculinity into something that actually functions long-term for themselves and their family and their business.
Oh dear. It's kind of like, this is peak health, this is functional, this is sick. It's like, hey man, we're not going to talk about peak health. We're just like, hey, are you able to function? Oh dear. Yeah,
but I'll tell you where my focus is going to be, and I'm sure in your business, your focus is probably the same. My focus will be on people who are amazing human beings already and want the slight edge of understanding better who they are, what their vision is, how to have more vitality, how to speak more truth into their life, and how to be a better man to their definition. And the vast swathes of humanity will not care, will want nothing to do with that. And that's fine. You know, if I fall off the mortal coil and I've helped 10, 20, 100 men become better, that has such a big knock-on effect for years and years to come. I'll be a pretty satisfied dude at that point.
Wow. I think this is great. You know, I was banging away at my keyboard here, taking a lot of notes. It's just great stuff, you know, wonderful gems from Simon. I think we're going to release this. Just a lot of men who are in business, you know, often our little entrepreneurship, marketing, whatever you call it, speaking, coaching, you know, space is populated with a lot of people that teach tactics. He's a great way to run a funnel. He's a great way to sales call. He's a great way to write an email. But oftentimes, once you learn the tactics, it's the other things that power the business, you know, the vision we have, thoughts we have, who we are. And I think that's actually severely lacking, but often cause the most pain. The amount of pain that comes from a broken funnel versus a broken life, the broken life is greater.
Oh, yeah. You know, I think it's a lot of the martial arts, Melvin. You know, it takes you a few years, you know, maybe 5 to 10 years to earn a black belt, at which point you probably know most of the techniques pretty well. And a lot of people quit at that point, but they quit just when it's getting good, because the journey after that is the journey into yourself, into learning and growing. In my martial art, we joke a lot that people leave the art at exactly the point that the art begins to demand that they change.
Wow.
People leave the art at exactly the point that the art demands they change. Well, let me translate that into you. People give up in business right around the point the business demands that they change. People leave relationships right around the point where the relationship demands that they change. But if you can stay and just keep going, because at that point, that's when it becomes painful. That's when the internal struggle of who the hell am I really begins. But if you can get through that phase, there's a paradise past that. Business and life and everything.
Wow, that is profound. So true. Absolutely so true. We just quit there because we know, oh shit, this is irreversible. Something's gonna happen. You know, and that's the difference between a dabbler and a person who's like a pro, right? Because the dabbler wants the idea of doing it, but then, you know, when it's like, okay, we're gonna do this for real now. Nah, I'm not. No, I don't want to take some pictures, man. You know, I don't want to do it for real. I just want to take some pictures.
Well, when you reach my level of experience, Mel, you know there's going to come a point where you have to change, and if you're smart, you quit way before that. Or you're dumb and you keep going, but that's where the reward is. Right?
Yeah. That's excellent. Simon, thank you so much. You know, we're gonna keep this to about 45, 50 minutes. I think we achieved that. You know, just a lot of wonderful wisdom here. And for everyone else watching, you know, if you're part of Xfactor, we're gonna get Simon to speak at our mastermind. And perhaps just be able to tap a lot more of Simon's wisdom. You know, there's one thing I love so much is that I really think, you know, I do my best to provide some elements of what Simon talks about. But I think, like, you know, I wanted him to come on because, you know, this is what he does. And oftentimes people have business and marketing problems actually masquerading as actually life problems. And, you know, the inability to get some things done is actually a reflection of a broken life instead of a broken marketing system. You know, and often people, I find that when you coach them, you actually need to give them life advice, not so much marketing advice. So I think if that is in your category, listening to this, being able to follow Simon's work, you know, I think you can Instagram him on Simon Smart. You're able to follow him. Facebook also. I think his work and the awakening of this kind of work will definitely shift a lot of your life also, apart from just learning marketing methods. So thank you so much, Simon.
Melvin, man, I love your energy. I love your attitude. Every time we talk, I have a great time and I learn so much from you as well. So thank you so much for having me.
Take care.